This is the Bears Barroom Radio Network. Draft on Tap is rated PG. Parental discretion is advised.
With the 8th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Roquan Smith, linebacker, Georgia.
Well, he might have been the best player in the college football playoff, even though Georgia didn't win the national championship. From the hometown of Montezuma, Georgia, he now goes to join the legends of the monsters of the Midway like Butkus, Singletary, Wilber Marshall, Urlacher, etc.
And here comes Mack again, but Kaiser gets away from him, but not from Smith. How's that for the opening play of your career? As Goff fires over the middle and it's intercepted at the 26-yard line. Roquan Smith, the rookie from Georgia, bounced out of bounds inside the 5.
In the 2018 draft, the Chicago Bears select James Daniels, center, Iowa.
Keep in mind, he's a youngster. He won't turn 21 until September 13th, and there are plenty of good things to like in James Daniels' game.
2018 second-round pick James Daniels had an excellent rookie campaign, starting 10 games at left guard. With talk now of possibly moving Daniels to center, his more natural position, the sky is the limit for the 21-year-old.
With the 51st pick of the 2018 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Anthony Miller, receiver, Memphis.
And how about this? Anthony Miller, there's the reaction in Memphis, Tennessee. He is going to be the latest weapon for Mitchell Trubisky.
Trubisky, play action, to the end zone. Touchdown, Bears, Anthony Miller. On second down, Trubisky well protected, wide open. Anthony Miller slips a tackle. Miller to the end zone. Touchdown, Bears.
Drink up, Bears fans. This is episode 2 of Draft on Tap. My name is Aldo Gandia. I'm the barkeeper here. And with us is Danny Shimon, our draft analyst, and Shayne Marsaw, who missed episode 1, and we're happy to hear that everything is fine at home, and he is with us for episode 2. Shayne, how are you?
Doing good. Getting ramped up for this draft. It's a little bit different feel. I think you guys will attest to. We're so used to having those top 10 picks and getting super excited about it. But with the way that we're involved with this, I'm just as excited as for pick 87, and I'm still going to have my draft party. I'm still going to be skipping out on work that day and pretty much that entire weekend because nice. I love this is a grown man's Christmas is what everybody refers to it in my house. They're like, this is, I get anxious the night before. I'm going to be anxious for pick 87. I'm like, is it time? Is it tomorrow? Yeah, is it tomorrow? Oh, draft today. I can't wait. I love all of it. Cannot wait.
Danny, and I know you're the same way.
I'm already excited. It's about 20-some days away, and I can't wait. I'm already shaking, and I got my draft, my notes here, and getting ready to go. First of all, I'd like to welcome Shayne back. Shayne, we missed you last episode. It's good to have you back here with us today. And yes, just like you, I am excited. This is a draft that's not top-heavy in talent in terms of superstars, potential superstars, but it does have a lot of depth, and I think it plays right into the hands of Ryan Pace and the Bears. With those mid to late picks that they have in this draft, I think they're going to have an opportunity here to go ahead and get some talented players and continue to add playmakers to this roster.
Yeah, I got to tell you guys that, and I'm not saying this because we don't have a pick in the first round, we being the Chicago Bears. But I just feel like this first round this year is not as exciting to me as previous first rounds because the talent level is not. There's not a lot of, in my opinion, not a lot of blue chip players. There's not a lot of intrigue going on, and truly because of the amount of talent that is considered mid round talent, these rounds are of more interest to me than ever before. In my Am I being a homer here in the way I'm thinking?
No, not at all. It really has nothing to do with having the high pick. I think that there's a ton of landmines in any draft. I mean, let's be honest. But I think more so this year, Danny, I think you'd probably agree. I don't like last year. You could look at a lot of these guys. You couldn't poke a lot. How many holes were you gonna poke in Roquan Smith?
Exactly.
How many holes were you gonna poke in that piece of shit offensive guard that the Colts drafted?
Just one. He was a guard.
If I only remembered his name, I forgot his name.
Yeah, it doesn't matter anyway. He's no James Daniels, but no, or
Saquon Barkley or something like that.
Yeah, you weren't going to poke holes. I mean, even you look up top. Even at Baker Mayfield, was there some flaws there? Yes, but to me, he was always the perfect guy to go into Cleveland to turn that around just on attitude alone. He wasn't perfect, but you couldn't poke a lot of holes in that guy's game. With what he was going to bring to the NFL. And I look at this draft and going down. I mean, Danny and I were talking offline about Arizona, and what the hell? Can you imagine, Aldo? Really? What would you be saying about Ryan Pace if he drafted a quarterback last year in the top 10, and then he's turning right around and he might do it again at number 1 overall? I mean, I guess you can make the case that you have to get the position right.
Right.
But so then you're just the same front office is in place that made. You're saying you didn't get it right in the top 10 last year?
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. And you want to talk about poking holes in a guy's game? We could have a whole entire show to do that with Kyler Murray. Does he have talent? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm glad I'm not an Arizona Cardinals fan.
Right.
I'll tell you that. It's just it's craziness. And Ryan Pace has made his hay in these 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. We got Javon Wims in the 7th round, and I couldn't be any more excited about the guy.
Bilal Nichols, 5th round.
Oh my God. Yeah. Perfect. That is the guy right there, Danny. I'm glad I forgot about him. That kid, I think, is going to make such a huge leap in year 2. I think he's going to be a guy that people are going to look at this entire NFL draft in general and be like, what the hell were we thinking? 5th round on this guy. And exactly. It makes it with Bilal Nichols, the way that he played. If I showed you the way that he played this year, if I told you that we drafted him late in the 1st round or early in the 2nd round, would you bat an eye at it right now?
No. Would have been a good pick.
Yeah.
Would have been a good pick, yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. It's guys like that Ryan Pace has made his hay on. Eddie Jackson in the 4th round, Tariq Cohen in the 4th round. We can go on and on. We just talked about a couple right now, and Javon Wims and Bilal Nichols. That's why a lot of Bears fans are down on this draft, because we don't have the 1st or 2nd round picks. Guys, there's so much talent in this draft. 144 underclassmen declared for this draft. Okay, that's just juniors or 3rd-year, redshirts, juniors. So these are guys that are going to add to the talent pool. There's only so many amount of picks. That's why I expect the Bears, I believe they only have 65 players currently on the roster. I think after the draft, once the draft has concluded, you should see the Bears make a lot more undrafted free agent signings, because they got to bring in guys to camp. And again, you're going after traits. You're going after guys who may have slipped through the crack and might have been, for whatever reason, not drafted. Case in point, Philip Lindsay from last year from the Denver Broncos. Guy goes on, makes a Pro Bowl. So there's always talent to be had and to be found. Gus Edwards was an undrafted running back for the Ravens. He's a guy that came in last year, and he made an impact for a team that was, going to a playoff. So there's always talent. The 1st and 2nd round guys get the headlines. Obviously, they're more well-known names in college football. But don't be fooled. You are going to get talented players. Just got to find them.
Hey guys, it is time to get Greg Gabriel on the phone. It is always cool, of course, just talking to you guys. I get so psyched up. But when we have a special guest like Greg Gabriel, oh my goodness, 30 years of NFL scouting experience, 9 years as the scouting director of the Chicago Bears. You can find his writings now at ProFootballWeekly.com. If you don't have a copy of the Pro Football Weekly Draft Guide, then you are missing out, because this is the #1 bestseller year after year. It covers draft prospects, over 200 of them. So let's get Greg on the phone right now.
Good morning, Greg.
Good morning. How you guys doing today?
Not too bad, Greg. How are you? Sorry to hear about your Achilles injury. How are you dealing with that?
Getting old sucks. It is what it is, and I don't know if I have to have surgery yet. I'll find that out Tuesday. If I was younger, they would do surgery regardless, but because of my age, and it's not like I'm going to go out and run 5 miles anymore. They can do it with casting if the tear, the gap between the top part of the tear and the lower part of the Achilles, if it's less than a centimeter after it's been sitting in a cast for a week, then they can just keep it in a cast. Then it'll be 2 months total in a cast. I'd rather do that than have to go through the surgery, but hey, it is what it is. Whatever they do, they do.
You'll be watching a lot of tape during that time, I imagine.
I'll be watching a lot of something. I don't know what the hell it's going to be.
Netflix, tape.
Actually, a lot of golf and whatever. I'm just about done with the tape. A few guys I got to rewrite still, but I'm pretty much done.
Well, let's start the interview with that. Who are you looking at right now that you have perhaps made a dramatic change or somewhat of a big change in your evaluation of that particular player?
Well, I just wrote a piece this morning, and I went back and looked at more tape on Rashawn Gary and Ed Oliver, because they're, most mocks you see, most analysts have them going top 10. And when you look at their athleticism, they totally deserve to go top 10. They're excellent athletes for their positions, but then you watch the tape and it's like, why aren't they playing better? And that's a concern. And whoever takes them, be it in the top 10 or the top 15 or whatever, I think there is a concern because the tape doesn't come close to matching the athleticism that they displayed at the combine and or their pro days. And you look at the sack numbers. First of all, I don't think Rashawn Gary's an edge. I think he's an inside player. I think he's going to end up being a 290-pound three technique who could be a hell of a three technique if he gets his head out of his ass and plays hard every down. But I don't see him ever being an outside guy. He could be a base left end in a 4-3, but then on pass rush, you're going to put him inside, and I think he could have an advantage inside as a pass rusher. Oliver, you look at him, and there was going into the season, people said, oh, hell, he could be the first pick in the draft. The tape says he isn't even a first-round pick. The athleticism does. I mean, he didn't play worth a darn in 2018. 3 sacks from a guy as athletic as he is. And then, he had some problems with the coaching staff. And so you got to look at that real closely. Is he going to go high? Yeah. How good is he going to be? I got questions.
I agree totally with Greg there. Not a surprise. In terms of Gary, like when I see Gary more of an interior defender eventually, you put on his tape from last year. I mean, the kid's athleticism just jumps out on you, at you on tape. But then this year, Greg, I was wondering, do you think they both kind of didn't want to get hurt, kind of played to the knew they were going to be top 10, first round picks, and just didn't put it all out on the field this year for both Gary and Oliver?
Yeah, that can very easily be the case, but it still leaves a red flag. I mean, you go back and one of the guys that jumps out in that type of situation was Jadeveon Clowney. Clowney stunk. his last year at South Carolina. Here's a guy who was the first pick in the draft. He had 3 sacks as an edge guy. And you couldn't block him the year before. So then he gets to his junior year at South Carolina, and he gets on the field, and he's just a player on the field. He didn't make any plays, didn't play with any intensity. Now compare him to, say, a guy like Aaron Donald. Now, Aaron Donald, played with a chip on his shoulder because he was shorter and had to prove that he was as good as he was. And now that guy lit it up every single snap, every single game. And that's what you want when you're taking a guy in first round with those premium picks. And so my question is, and some of these guys turn out to be great players, and some of them end up being busts. The question is, if they weren't going all out for their school, who says they're going to go all out for the pro team? A lot of times it works out. There's other times when it doesn't. And it's just, I just want to point out the concern more than anything else. That they're going to go high, absolutely, because the talent says that they're going to go high. And when you're taking defensive linemen, they always have a little bit of crap in their neck. You're not going to get the clean guy that you can get at some other positions. It's just the nature of the position, the personality of the players and whatever. But to what you said, Danny, do they try to protect themselves? I think there's a lot of truth in that. But at the same time, to me, that's a red flag.
Greg, I want to transition over to the running back situation here. We saw, Philadelphia trade for Jordan Howard. Were you at all surprised, maybe a little bit, with the timing of it? I mean, I know that you've been involved, obviously, with the Bears before, but do you think it would have been more beneficial just to wait it out and take him to camp to see if an injury cropped up, or were you just surprised by the timing of it at all?
No, I think the timing of it shows that he was not in their plans, period. And they were going to move on. They wanted somebody better at the position. And I don't think that it's a takeaway from who Jordan Howard is. Jordan Howard's a good football player, but he's got limitations, and he's not a fit for this offense. And they want guys that can play in this scheme. They did not. The running game was disappointment last year, and they want the running game to be more productive and have more big plays than it produced a year ago. And to do that, you got to have a different type of player. You could say, well, why do you go to Philly then? Because it's the same offense. Yeah, but they have a history. Everybody runs their own version of Andy Reid's offense, the guys who came from that tree. And they run their version of it, and they've had success with some bigger backs. Personally, I think, though, he's going to play. He's going to be a role player there. He's going to get 10 to 12 touches a game. He's not going to be the bell cow. He's going to get their tough yards when they need it, but there's going to be a lot of time when he's not in the game. Like I said, you get 10, 12 touches a game. He's probably going to play 40% of the offensive snaps, and that's going to be it. And they had Blunt there a few years ago, and he played that role, and I think you're going to see Jordan play that same role. Just to stay on the same track, though, I think some of the stuff, and I wrote about it yesterday in Pro Football Weekly, but, I saw some national stuff saying, well, the Eagles are playing the compensatory game. Great. They know they're going to lose Howard after next year. Who said Howard's going to get a contract that even comes close to generating a compensatory pick? I think that part's ludicrous. Right. He's going to be a fifth-year back. Very few backs ever get a big contract that can generate a compensatory pick when you get to that second contract. And when you look at his production from his rookie year to his second year to his third year, not only have the yards gone down, but the yards per carry have gone down. And that's what happens that's the position. That's the running back position. You go into it thinking that you're going to, and hoping that you're going to get 3 to 4 good years out of a player, and then you're going to move on to somebody else. And that's exactly, what's happened with the Bears. They want a quicker, more explosive type player in there that can hopefully generate more big plays.
Speaking of quicker, more explosive players, I know you're a big Miles Sanders fan, Greg. Is there anybody else in that 3rd to 4th round range that you see being a perfect fit for this offense?
Well, I don't think Sanders has a chance of being there in the 3rd round. I mean, I got him as the best back in the draft, and just a shade above Jacobs from Alabama. They both have a question mark. They didn't play a lot until the 2018 season, and for good reasons. I mean, the backfield situation in Alabama is loaded, always is loaded. You got to wait your turn to get a chance to play. And at Penn State with Sanders, he was playing behind Saquon Barkley, who was the second pick in the draft last year. And how can you fault him for being a backup at that time when you look at the competition that he was up against? So, in both cases, they performed when they got the opportunity. The only other knock, though, that I have on Jacobs, though, is that he wasn't the starter even this year. Sanders became the starter. In Alabama, it was Harris. When you compare tape with Harris and Jacobs, it's not even close. But for the Alabama coaches, they were going with the veteran over the guy that was really coming on in what was to be his final year. But Sanders, could he go? I think there's only two possible running backs that go in the first round, and it's not going to shock me at all if nobody goes in the first round, because I don't think there's a special back in this draft. But if those guys go, I think it's, like 25 to 32 range, but more than likely they go in the upper part of the second round. And after that, I think, the depth of the position is pretty good. It's what you're looking for. I look at guys who are potential fits for the Bears. I like David Montgomery. No, he didn't time fast, but you can compare him to, say, Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt ran a 4.62. David Montgomery ran 4.63. I mean, there's a lot of similarity there. I think the best guy that could be available at that time, but I think it's probably less than 50-50 that he's there, is Darrell Henderson from Memphis. Then you've got Travion Williams from Texas A&M, Devine Ozigbo from Nebraska, who did not go to the combine, Dexter Williams from Notre Dame, Devin Singletary from Florida Atlantic. Those are the guys that are I think, the best fits for what Matt Nagy wants at the position.
One of the players that I really like, and I think fits perfectly in this Nagy system, is Montgomery from Iowa State. I just don't know and you think he might be available in this third round range, or I just think he's going to go a little bit higher. But he's a guy I think would be a perfect match in terms of pass blocker, and protection, pass catcher. And like I said, he doesn't have the breakaway home run speed, but he does have that shiftiness, those quick feet to be able to jump in and out of cuts or cut in and out of holes, I should say. And he gets through the line of scrimmage really quick. So I think he'd be a nice, really smooth transition fit into this offense.
I agree with you. I think he's similar to Hunt. I hate using Hunt because of the off-field issues, but at the same time, he was a great back in this offense. And so, you're trying to find guys that has similar traits. And I think they are. I mentioned before. I mean, their difference in their 40 speed at Indy, electronically timed on the same surface, was 1/100th of a second. They're the same speed. They have similar skill sets. Montgomery's actually probably a more productive player at a higher level of comp in college than Hunt was, playing in the MAC. But, I don't think there's anything not to like about Montgomery's game other than he doesn't have the blazing speed. But I'll go back. Running backs, it's not 40 time. It's quickness. It's quickness, elusiveness, the quick feet, instincts, ability to create. When I look at a running back, I don't care if the guy has a bunch of long runs, because if you look at the college game, especially if you're looking at the end zone tape, you look at the holes they're running through. And my God, you could drive a pickup truck through those things, and an old man like me might be able to get 4 or 5 yards. Those holes are so big. In the NFL, a hole's a foot wide. You got to be able to create, and you got to be able to change direction in the hole and find a little sliver of open space to be able to get some productive yards. And so, unless a guy can run between the tackles at the college level, and prove he can run between the tackles and in tight spaces, I don't put as big a grade. And we go back, there's a guy, I think the Eagles took him in the 3rd or 4th round a couple of years ago. And just put up great for like 2,000 yards at San Diego State. The name was Pumphrey, if you remember the player. I think it was 2 years ago. He totally busted. He didn't even make it to his second year in Philadelphia. They found an injury for him to get him on IR his rookie year, and then cut him his second year during camp because he just couldn't play. He's a total space player. You get him to space, he's a pretty good player. He can catch the ball, but he couldn't pick up a quarter of a yard running between the tackles and having to create and move the pile. It just wasn't his game, and I think that's what you really have to look for and when you're scouting a college running back. So throw out the numbers and just look at the talent and see, what they do and what they can't do. And you'll see that there's a correlation between guys who end up being successful NFL runners versus guys who put up big yards in college. And I'll go back to the Jordan Howard draft. Jordan Howard is the number 4 running back in that draft because exactly that. He could run between the tackles. His game projected to the NFL game, and that's what you have to look for when looking at college football players, college running backs.
We're talking with Greg Gabriel, 30 years of NFL scouting experience, 9 of them as the scouting director of the Chicago Bears. You can find his work now on Pro Football Weekly, and he's also on 670 The Score, Sports Radio. Greg, we are 25 days out from the NFL draft. Where are teams at right now with their board? What are they talking about? What are they planning? What's settled? Draw a picture for us as to what's going on in war rooms throughout the NFL.
Well, number one, I hate the word war room. I've written about it several times.
Sorry.
And you guys may have seen it. It's nobody in the NFL is at war. There's real wars going on in other parts of the world. It's a draft room to me. Starting probably not this coming week, but the week after, that's when teams really get down to the nitty-gritty. They have preliminary grades on everybody right now, and that was an ongoing process. And I can't speak for every team. I can speak for how some teams do it because I haven't been with every team, but I know, some of the different systems. And you generally meet at the end of the college season in December, end of December, or beginning of December, and you put a preliminary board together, and basically you're eliminating players more than anything else. Just guys you're not going to have interest in, you don't want to draft, you don't want as a free agent. You're cutting right off the bat. You're working from well over 1,000 names to say, and I'm just making this number up, I don't have the exact number, around 600, 650 names. And you're going to carry that list through the All-Star games and into the beginning of February before the Combine. And then you're going to meet again. Now you're going to pare the list down even more. And because the football season's over, the NFL football season is over, now the coaches get involved. The scouts have pretty much done their work, and you have preliminary grades on each player that came from the scouting department. Now the coaches get involved. You can have the position coach, the coordinator, maybe even the head coach also write reports on certain players. And they're not going to write every player that you still have, for lack of a better word, kept alive in the system. They might do 15, 20 players that are going to be assigned by the scouting department for them to write. And they could be players at different levels of the draft. Some could be premium round players, some could be late round players, and some of it also will have to do with you have a preliminary plan as far as going into the draft as, okay, I want a running back, but I don't want a running back high. If I take a running back, it's going to be on day 3. So then if that's the case, then the bulk of the work that the running back coach is going to do is guys that you think are day 3 type football players and not premium round guys. And that's across the board, with every position. So and also you got the general manager, personnel director, whatever, they're doing more work on players that you really like. Okay, and we can call them hot list players. That's the term we used here when I was in Chicago. And that got down when you got down to it, about 125 players for any draft. And you really concentrate on those players so you know them upside down, inside out, you know their background, you know their character, you know their work ethic, you know what the coaches say about them, and you know their game inside and out. And those are the players that you're concentrating on. And then starting, you know, probably next week, now you're going to start to put the board together. And generally it's done by position. So you're going to stack the board by position, best to worst. And then when you get done with that, you do it the other way, best player to worst player, regardless of the position. And you start to formulate a plan as to what you're going to do in the draft. And a lot of that has to do with what you did in free agency. Your team had needs. And so you've got to work hand in hand between free agency and the draft. So you may have solved or taken care of some of those needs in free agency, and now the needs that you still have, you're going to try to concentrate on in the draft. Is it always going to work out and you're going to come out of the draft and free agency with everything you need? No, that seldom happens, but you're going to try to get the bulk of it done. And by working together between free agency and the draft, you know, oftentimes you can have that done. But, you know, when you see some of this stuff saying, oh, you know, the LA Chargers want to take so-and-so in the first round, and you're hearing that now, bullshit. That's so far from true. And, you know, it's just somebody guessing. And just when when other guys put out stuff like, you know, a general manager told me this or a general manager told him that, it's not true.
Matt Miller.
You know, the last thing that a general manager is going to do is call up a draft nick. You know, and most of the time they don't even know who these guys are. They're too busy. You know, these guys are figments of their own imagination, and they could care less. I got close relationships with a lot of guys in the league. I think they, you know, and there's a few that do seek out my opinion, but do you think everybody does? Hell no. They could care less what I think. You know, the guys who know my work and know where I'm strong, they ask, you know, did you do this, guy? What do you think? And I write reports for them, and I get compensated for it. But that's but you know, I got experience. These other guys, they don't have experience. And you know, look at a guy like Dan Shaka. Did you ever see Dan Shaka pulling out the "I talked to so and so" bit? No, because he doesn't have to. He talks to him anyway. And you know, Dan spent a long time in the league, and these other guys, they're trying to increase their credibility, and reality is they're making a mockery of their credibility because they have none. But that's my opinion.
Greg,
Next question.
Greg, what I'm going to ask the guys is to each ask a final question, because you've promised us 30 minutes and you've been very gracious with those 30 minutes. So let me go to Shayne first, and then we'll have Danny ask the last question.
Greg, at number 87, I've seen you on Twitter kind of allude to it too, that, you know, tight end is probably a more pressing need than everybody is letting on. Can you just touch on, to me, I totally agree with that sentiment, because I was a Trey Burton guy, but the way that everything unfolded, and you are worrying about the anxiety issue, and Adam Shaheen seemed to be making that step until the injury. Just touch on that position, and I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised if a guy is there at 87. Everybody seems to be earmarking quarterback or running back at 87, and I think that's a mistake, the way that this draft is setting up. But can you just touch on the tight end position a little bit?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, skip the position. When you get to the draft, you know, you're going to have, they're picking at 87, and they're going to be looking at their board. Now, the board's not going to have number 83, 84, 85, 86, 87. Seldom do teams do that anymore. You know, you're ranked by areas, and you know, you have one board that's ranked top to bottom and a second board that's ranked by position. And hopefully you got a need position that has a grade that you can take. You might have like 3 or 4 players with the same grade. And so you can go, and when you have that and it's your turn to pick, you can go by position. So now getting back to, say, tight end versus running back, and I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say they got a tight end with a using our old grading system with an A66 grade, which is theoretically a solid second-round grade, and their best running back is a B65, there's no question what you're doing. You're taking the tight end because there's such a big difference in the grade. You can't drop down a level of player to take a player at a certain position. That defeats the whole purpose of the draft. So nobody knows how the draft's going to play out. We're not going to know that till April 25th and April 26th, and who's going to be there and who isn't going to be there. I do think that there is a strong chance that their first two picks are running back and tight end. Could it be tight end and running back? Yeah, but again, that's who they looking at versus who, and how much depth is left at the position. You got to figure that in too, because you could say, okay, I could take a tight end or I could take a running back now. What are the chances I'm going to get a tight end with a fourth-round pick? Who's left? What kind of grade do we have on them? And a lot of those questions are asked. You play through those scenarios in the meetings leading up, over the course of the next 3 weeks. You do that now rather than have to do that on draft day and make that decision. You rehearse this so that once you get to draft day, you've already gone through the scenarios, and it makes it a lot easier and a lot quicker to make, the right decision. But now getting back to the tight end position, I think it's a good tight end class. Obviously, at the top, you got Hockenson and Fant that are just excellent players, as good as we've seen in the last few years come out, and totally different kind of players. One guy's a Y who can also play as a move, and that's Hockenson, and then Fant is a pure move guy. So it's like, okay, which one do you want? And a lot of times your scheme will dictate that. A lot of people like Irv Smith. I like Irv Smith. I think he's going to be a heck of a player. But at the same time, he's got real short arms, and that's a concern for me. He's got like 31.5-inch arms, and you're going to ask this guy to block, and he's a hell of a blocker. And that, that leverage problem with 31.5-inch arms for a tight end who's blocking edge guys with 34 and 35-inch arms, that can be a problem. Just wanted to point that out. But guys, it's going to be what are they looking for too. I'm not as worried as you are on Trey Burton with that anxiety thing. That has never happened until this year. It never happened when he was in Philly. At least I never heard of it happening. And so, I think it's just something that you do the therapy involved to take care of the situation and go from there. But I don't know what Shayne is going to be as far as being a top player. I think he was set back by the injury. He looked like he was going to have a big year, and then he had the injury. So I think it's an obvious need. Do the Bears want a guy who's more of a Y or more of a move or can do both? And if you're looking at a guy who could do both, it might be Dax Raymond from Utah State, Dawson Knox, but Dawson Knox ran pretty good yesterday, so you might not get him as late as I originally thought. But after that, there's not a lot. There's a guy, this guy from San Diego State, and I don't have his name right in front of me. He's a guy that I think is going to be a great third-round pick. He might even go as high as the second round. And that's another name that you can look at, and especially if he's staring the Bears in the face when they pick at 87.
I'm just curious about Caden Smith from Stanford. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I forgot that. I really liked his tape, and then he ran terrible. He ran like 4.9, and I had estimated his speed at being, like a 4.7 type guy, 4.75, because he plays fast, and he plays in an offense that's really relates well to an NFL offense or what they're asking the players to do. He can block, and he's a good route runner. If he's a good guy, does that speed scare you? And, I haven't seen a report that Stanford's had their pro day yet, so he may run a lot better after pro day, but that speed was scary, and that's going to hurt him come draft day.
The San Diego State tight end you were talking about, Kaylee Warren,
yes,
is that the guy? Saying on the same thing here in terms of, needs and players dropping, I think outside linebacker, edge rusher is also going into the draft is going to be a huge need for the Bears, and I think something they might address depending on who falls for them. And we were talking about earlier, Greg, how guys you have graded higher, maybe, low end first round, high end second round, could drop. And a guy that has taken a hit in this whole draft process is a kid from Florida, Ja'Kai Polite. And I know he had some in terms of interview issues at the combine. He's trying to fix that part of his draft process and trying to get back on the good graces of these general managers. However, his tape is first round tape. If he drops to
I agree with
third
you.
round,
And I don't want to cut you short, but I got a delivery guy coming right parking the truck. I'll answer it quick. You're right. His tape is outstanding, and but the combine was bothersome. And then I think it might have been yesterday, the day before, he asked pro day, and that was terrible too, as far as the numbers. And so, he's a guy that's probably, because of everything involved, probably going to be around later than sooner. And then it gets to, do we like him or don't we like him as far as, the character? And that's where, the discussions in the meeting come into play. And there's different testing that they do too. There's psychological testing that all the teams do on these players. And you're going to get the results from that. And then you're going to make a decision as to, is this a guy we want, or are we going to pass because of what the issues are?
Greg, once you get back on your feet, we'd love to take you out for a beer and talk about everything from A to Z, and we really appreciate the time you've given us. We want to wish you a happy weekend and get well soon.
Thank you, guys, and let's talk soon.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Bye-bye.
That was a great time with Greg Gabriel. And Shayne, you know this. Greg doesn't do interviews for all other podcasts. I mean, if you want to book him for your podcast, you got to come up with some money, right?
$2,500 up front.
So we're very fortunate that he's graced us with his time and his expertise. All right, I want to talk more in depth about this Jordan Howard trade and get your guys' opinions on it. And so let me begin with you, Shayne. What was your reaction when the Bears pulled the trigger on this trade with the Philadelphia Eagles that will probably result in a 6th-round draft pick coming back and potentially a 5th-rounder?
My initial shock was fucking Philly, of course.
Your favorite team.
Yeah. All my family that was not worried about Jordan Howard leading up to the playoff game, now they all love him immensely. Oh, my God, we stole him. This guy's fantastic. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of brought it up with Greg. I would have been more surprised if Jordan Howard was on the roster in September, obviously. I was just surprised by the timing because the way that I was looking at it, you hear, what do we always hear with this team, especially right now with Mitch heading into year 3? We're in the talent accumulation business. We want to win now in this window. We have to take advantage of this window before we have to pay our quarterback. And yes, I understand he was getting a salary bump up to $2 million. Is he a perfect fit in this offense? No. Neither was Benny Cunningham. Yes, he had the special teams prowess. Taquan Mizell, I was never a big fan. Mike Burton is on this roster. You can carry Mike Burton and Taquan Mizell, and you can't figure out. So I don't care if they would have kept Jordan Howard on the roster as a short yardage back, and that's it. You deal with it, Jordan. He talked about this on the Earl Bennett podcast. Earl Bennett talked to him and said, "Hey, there's been a lot of rumors. And this is even before free agency opened up. They're talking about Le'Veon Bell and all that craziness." And he said, "What are you going to do if they bring in a guy like Le'Veon Bell or they go out and draft a kid?" Jordan Howard's words were, "I'm going to be the best short yardage back in the NFL." And that's exactly what you want to hear. And for $2 million, why not use this kid up is my point. Mm-hmm. 5th, 6th-round draft pick, I get it. Worst case or best case for me, if Philly's offering you this deal right now, I'm holding on to the guy through camp. Who knows what happens? Sony Michel goes down for New England or, anybody. We saw the kid that Washington drafted in the second round last year tore his ACL in like the first day of camp. Those injuries happen. I just don't know why it had to be done now, especially that it wasn't even a pick for this draft. Mm-hmm. It's a pick for next year. To me, right now, Jordan Howard holds more value to me than a sixth rounder in 2020. Even with you letting him walk. So that was my outlook on it. I get may not be a perfect fit. I think it speaks, like I just said to you guys, that they're a lot higher on. Listen, did I have Mike Davis earmarked as the guy that they were going to go out on day one and bring in? I mean, I had that day off work. I had NFL Network on. I was hitting refresh on my computer, on my phone, every 30 seconds, just like everybody else was. And when I saw that come up, the Bears, have agreed to terms with running back Mike Davis. I liked Mike Davis. I didn't think that was going to be their first guy. Right. But to me, it just, like Danny says, you want to have this versatility and you want to be able to attack, stay in attack mode no matter who's in there. I don't like the timing of it myself.
Danny, your thoughts?
Yeah, the timing of it, I was a little surprised of it as well. Not that he got traded, because I think we all agree that Howard was going to get traded eventually. My thought was, and Aldo, you and I discussed this briefly the last time we spoke, was Ryan Pace is always known for going and getting his guy. He didn't have the capital in terms of money, cap space to go get his guy this offseason. But I thought maybe he would target someone in that second round range and probably use Jordan Howard along with the third round pick, probably a future pick, to kind of as capital to go up and jump and get his guy. So that's what I was kind of thinking. But the timing of it, that's what shocked me here to get to trade him prior to the draft. And I think that was in part probably, and that's just a guess on my part, is a favor to Jordan Howard. They didn't want to bring him into camp and knowing that he'd have a diminished role and maybe he'd have and going into a free agent year and have a disgruntled Jordan Howard in that running backs room. So I think they did him a favor and kind of got him to a situation where Nagy knows Peterson. Obviously, those guys are close friends. He knows how he was going to use them and that he'd be effective with the Eagles and put him in a good situation in that final year of his contract to possibly succeed and then go on and get that second contract that he's looking for.
Do you think Jordan Howard's going to do us a favor when we're in Philly next year? Is he going to lay down at the goal line? That's the. No. I get what you're saying. When you're telling me that you're in this win now window, I'm keeping the guy. Especially, I don't give a shit if it's $2 million on his contract, the salary bump. To me, he's got to. I'm not worried about this. Aldo, you've heard me talk about this for 4 or 5 years on this show. I understand special teams is a huge part of it. It seems like a lot of it's getting phased out of the game. I have a spot for Jordan Howard on my team, and you know what? Tough shit, Jordan. It's part of the deal. You have that 4-year contract, and I'm going to use you however I want to use you. You can go get your contract next year, after you walk away. And it's just you can't tell me that everybody says that this is a business. We're acquiring talent, and you're just essentially. I don't want to say you're pissing it away because you are getting something in return, but if you're on this Super Bowl run in 2019, can you think of a better third-string running back than Jordan Howard?
Well, apparently Matt Nagy can. I mean,
right, but they rostered 4 running backs last year, Aldo, plus a fullback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get it, man. And we're in the guessing game here, but perhaps they look at Ryan Nall and say, we think Ryan Nall can do what Jordan Howard can do, and he's got more speed at it. And perhaps, we've identified a half dozen running backs that we know will be there on day 3 that we can target and can come in and help immediately, which is one of the reasons why trading Jordan Howard was so difficult. Because if you're a team like, for instance, I always thought that maybe the Oakland Raiders would be in play. But because they need a power back like Jordan Howard, and they
signed Isaiah Crowell the same day we traded Jordan Howard.
How about that?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
And so, but I looked at their draft assets, and I said to myself, if I'm the Raiders, I wouldn't trade for Jordan Howard. Would I give up my 4th-round pick for a guy that I can pick up Raekwon Armstead, who ran a 4.45 in the combine and is considered a power back? I would rather draft Armstead, have him for 4 years at a low salary, than bring in a 1-year player who is going to seek big bucks after his time is done with the Bears. And then another issue is, I forgot who mentioned this. Perhaps it was Greg Gabriel on social media. There's no guarantee you would have gotten a compensatory pick. If you
you're not going to. He's making $2 million this year, and he would have to get like over a $4 million raise next year to even qualify for. So this was never about a comp pick,
right?
But it's just you talk about Oakland, but Aldo, if you're Oakland, would you have given a 6th-round draft pick in 2019 for Jordan Howard?
Probably, yes.
Would you have given the Bears back their own 6th-rounder?
Yes, I probably would have.
So that's, to me, you have the potential for it to be a 5 next year. But I don't know. I understand gaining draft capital, and Ryan Pace is doing a great job. If we do get some comp picks next year, there's potential that the Bears could be up around 8, 9, 10 picks next year, even without a 1st-rounder.
Right.
But I don't know. It's a gamble, and at the end of the day, I think I'm a better team. I think you saw Kyle Long, his reaction. You saw Charles Leno. These guys, what's going? Adrian Amos, Bears just lost a dog. And
he was very popular in the locker room. He was very Howard, no doubt about it. And that's why I think if you left him on this roster and the guys knew that guys know if you're in the future plans or not, and you kind of left him on this roster just to be like a 3rd-round back, we're talking about a part-time player on his free agent contract year, I think that would give out bad vibes within the locker room. And we know how Nagy is about building that culture and having a positive attitude. I just think that's part of the reason why they went ahead and just, instead of keeping him on the roster and using him, because like you said, you're right, he would be one heck of a backup or a pretty useful back in part of a rotation. But I think just doing that would kind of give off a bad vibe to the rest of the players. And I think they just wanted to do good by Howard and just to let him go ahead and go somewhere else and hopefully have a great year and then catapult that into a bigger payday. So that's just my belief. But plus, I think the Raiders are kind of scared trading with the Bears after that Khalil Mack trade. So.
Don't talk to Pro Football Focus about that. They don't agree.
Oh my God.
No, I understand you want to keep the locker room together, and you don't want to essentially shit on the guy. But like I said, I'm going to play the poker table that maybe there's a team out there that doesn't get the running back that they want after the draft is wrapped up, or an injury creeps up in training camp to the running back position on a team that expects to be a contender. And to me, I'm rolling the dice with that and seeing if that will open up rather than doing it now.
Very good. All right, we're staying on the topic of running backs for this show. For the rest of this show, I've asked both Shayne and Danny to give me a list of their top 5 running backs that they think that the Bears might target in the mid to late rounds in this draft. So we're not going to talk about guys who are, first round, second round targets. This is more of guys that are likely, potentially going to fall to the 3rd, 4th, 5th round and get their takes on why the Bears should target these guys. We're going to do Shayne's top 5 today, and then in our next episode, we'll tackle Danny's top 5. So we will begin with...
For Alexander Mattison. He lowers his shoulder at the 40-yard line where he's finally finished off, but he takes it out to the 41 and picks up 33 with a major burst.
Alexander Mattison. 5'11", 221 pounds, 31-inch arms, ran the 40 at 4.67 in his senior year at Boise State. He finished top 10 nationally in rushes, 302, rushing yards, 1415, and rushing touchdowns, 17.
You know, it's a guy that I have my TV on right now, and I was going through my DVR. I'm a big DVR guy with college football. You know, I go through and whatever games are on, if I know there's potential guys, I record, and I may not watch them until, you know, this time of year when I'm picking out guys that I really want to focus in on. And this was a kid that I always just enjoyed watching. You know, people talk about Kareem Hunt. I don't think he's quite as explosive as Kareem Hunt, but I see some Kareem Hunt in his game. I love the way that the kid runs with power, and I know, Danny, you and I talked about him a little bit. When I see him go with power, he reminds me a lot of the way that Marion Barber used to just, blow people up. And then he does give you that added benefit where he's got the feet and he can bounce off tackles and get outside. And he's a little bit faster even than you think. And I believe he had around 65 receptions throughout his college career. So what does this Matt Nagy offense want? You know, you want that fail-safe option where you can always dump it off to a guy, and that's going to get you yards there. And it's just, I think he's much more explosive than people are giving him credit for, and it's just a guy, for whatever reason, that isn't getting a lot of pub, Danny, to this point, and I don't really know why he's not.
He's the that guy that you mentioned to me, and I was like, all right, I'll take a look at him. And this kid is one heck of a productive back. I mean, the last couple of seasons, over 1,000 yards, 12 and 17 touchdowns respectively over the last 2 seasons, 33 for his career. As Shayne mentioned, 60 receptions. So, this guy can catch. They do flank him out in the slot at Boise State and let him run some routes there as well. Breaking down his tape, like Shayne mentioned, he's a 5'11", 221 power physical runner. He's shifty. He's got the shiftiness to be able to get, be an in-between tackle, an effective in-between tackles runner, one cut downhill. He doesn't have the speed. So, the home run, take it, over the top speed. He does struggle a little bit when he wants to bounce it outside, getting to the corner. So I think that's the one area that I knocked him on is just the lateral agility in terms of, being able to cut it and break it outside, and even the home run hitting speed. So, but he's another one of these guys that we see a lot of in this draft. These guys that are physical, tough runners, one cut downhill. And in terms of what the Bears' needs are, I mean, he would to fulfill their needs because of his ability to catch the ball, be effective in between the tackles. I just think, and we've talked about this, in previous podcasts, that they're looking for that home run hitting speed. It might not be a guy who runs a 4.3 or 4.4, but guys who can take, a pitch or take a handoff and take it 20, 25 yards. Shayne, you're bringing up a good point earlier. We were talking about that Philly game where Howard had that opening to be able to take that run to the house, and he just couldn't do it. And I think they're looking for guys that could give them that element of speed at the running back position, in this offense.
Yeah, just 9 carries of 15-plus yards last year, 2018, I think, and that's according to NFL.com. And I think that might be the issue why he's not getting the attention, Shayne, that you think he deserves, particularly with here in Chicago. Is it just seems like Nagy wants that guy with that 4th or 5th gear, which is something that Jordan Howard didn't have. But he does kind of fit the bill for being able to catch the ball, and he's proficient at it. I don't know, how well versed he is on that route tree, but we've learned from interviews with that we've heard on other shows with Matt Bowen talking about how Nagy prefers a running back who can run all sorts of different routes, so that linebackers are concerned with that player when he's out there on 3rd down and not just looking at a blocking running back. But I've looked at a little bit of video of this guy, and he is super impressive, and he's a workhorse. This guy had several games where he carried the ball 30-plus times, and he just, it looked as strong at the end of the game that he did at the beginning. So he's an intriguing prospect, no doubt about it.
And he's only a junior, and he's got almost 600 carries. So he doesn't have. I mean, he's got a lot of carries, but he doesn't have the the 4-year wear and tear if you will, on his tread. So he still has some more running left to do. I just think, like we just talked about, that speed is what they're looking for. And I think anybody who doesn't have that kind of speed, that kind of ability, takes kind of a back seat in their eyes.
I think everybody gets intoxicated by a guy that's running a 4.3 or a 4.4, at the running back position. But what did Nagy have in Kansas City and Kareem Hunt? Greg talked about it earlier. He wasn't a 4.4 guy.
No, he was 4.62. 4.62 coming out of the combine.
Yeah, exactly. And let's not forget. I mean, you have a guy like Sony Michel. Yeah, he's a guy that can open it up a little bit, but I don't think anybody's going to sit there and say that he's a speed merchant or anything like that. Like I said, everybody gets intoxicated with that. This is still the NFC North. You're still going to need to get these tough yards in November and December, and where we're going in January and February next year. And I just don't want people to overlook the benefit of having a guy that, while he may not be perfect in the speed area, you can still make a house call, like I said, running a 4.62, 4.63, and that's essentially what he is. And another thing is, let's be honest, if you have a guy, like Alexander Mattison with his game, if he's running a 4.4, we're not even going to have a chance at him at number 87.
That's for sure. Damien Harris, 5'10", 216 pounds, out of Alabama. Ran the 40 at the Combine, 4.57 seconds. Harris was a second-team All-SEC pick in his senior year. Led the Tide in rushing with 876 yards and 9 touchdowns.
Another guy Greg kind of alluded to when we were talking, Danny, Aldo, Alabama is just a factory. When they have an injury at the running back position or anywhere else for that matter, it's not even the next man up. It's, all right, go get me the next 5-star recruit. Bring him up and let him go. And, Josh Jacobs was there, and like Greg said, not even a starter. Damien Harris is a little bit like Alexander Mattison, not the perfect guy. He's not a guy that's going to show you a ton of burst to get outside. He's just a well-rounded guy. For as big as he is, and I know I just said that he doesn't show a ton of burst, but he can get outside and make those plays. And he's another guy that can give you pass plays that that can open up an offense for you. And one thing that I love about Damien Harris, Danny, and I don't know if you've noticed this, I'm sure you have. For a running back, I love the way that this kid adjusts to the ball in the passing game. I've seen him make plays where you're like, holy shit, he looks like he's I want to say a top-end wideout, but just his body adjustment, you don't see a lot of running backs do that in the passing game, and that's something that I do see with him, in his this running back by committee in Alabama.
Right, and a lot of people forget that he was the starter for Alabama. Josh Jacobs is getting the first round pub, second round pub, but he was a guy that the coaching staff trusted to have the ball, to start the game for them. So he's 5'10", 216 pounds, like you said. He's a strong runner. He's got the ability to run inside. Also, he's got some quickness, some shiftiness to him that he can bounce it to the outside. Yep. He's got some of that speed, and like you mentioned, he's got the hands to be able to be a pass catcher in the backfield. I think I see him more of a better fit for me in the Nagy offense than I do Mattison. Now, some might say, what's the difference between the two? Just a little more shiftier, a little more faster, in my opinion. He ran a 4.57 40 at the Combine, but he's got that the explosiveness in his lower legs. So he's got that 37-inch vertical, 121-inch broad jump. So stuff like that is what I see in some of these running backs that have that explosion, that ability to go ahead and get those tough yards, and they become that in-between tackle runner. Like I said, he's a guy that was trusted by the Alabama coaching staff to be their starter, and I think is very underrated. And this guy, if he goes in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round range, he's going to be a guy that's going to make a team very happy.
One of the things that I think is very underrated with a guy like Damien Harris, and this is another thing that people that aren't complete degenerates like we are going over all of this stuff, is nobody talks about it, why he was the starter. was because of his pass blocking.
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's something that, again, it's hard. Alabama's going to get a bad rap because, yes, their offensive line is fantastic, and they have 5-star recruits everywhere, but that's why he was in there. He's not afraid to put his head in there and do the dirty work. And then you see him bounce out, like you said, Danny, showing that burst. He shows it in the passing game and in the running game, and it gives him the ability to make plays. And one thing that I think you have to think about, and this is even going back to Mattison, is he played at Boise State. You incorporate a guy like that into this offense when he's surrounded by Tariq Cohen, Mitch Trubisky, Allen Robinson, Trey Burton, Anthony Miller, all of these guys. I think you're going to see more to the true type of player that he is when he's not the focal point of a defense coming in. You go into Boise, and people like their I'm blanking on their quarterback's name. Danny, I know you were a fan.
Rippon.
Rippon, yes. Sorry.
Yep.
Obviously the quarterback's going to be a focus, but everybody knew, you go in there and you're going to focus on Mattison first and foremost. Stop the running game, and then we'll focus on other things. But I think you put him in an environment with other playmakers, it can end up being a type of, pick your poison.
Yeah, Greg Gabriel wrote in the Pro Football Weekly Draft that Harris might not be a special player. Well, I will politely disagree that I think Harris can become a special player if he plays for the right team with the right scheme suitable for his skills and plays with a team that has an outstanding offensive line. So, this guy, to me, I don't know if he's going to last past the third round. I'd like to get your takes on it because I do see this guy as a special running back, and that certain teams out there are going to be kind of, salivating at the thought of having this guy on their roster.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, I think he's in that third round range. Will he go past? Will he last for day 3? That I don't think so. I think this guy is very highly respected in terms of the scouting community, and I think once coaches watch his tape, and like Shane, you mentioned, his ability to be to be effective in pass protection. Coaches love running backs that they can bring in, especially rookies, and not fear they're going to get their quarterbacks killed. So I think this is a kid that will be able to come in and contribute on day one. And a lot of these teams, like we talked about, that are looking for running backs besides the Bears, so I think a lot of these guys are going to be looking at a kid like Harrison and trying to bring him in and make him a day one contributor, if not a starter.
5'7", 203 pounds, Devin Singletary from Florida Atlantic. Ran a 4.66 at the Combine. Nonetheless, CUSA coaches were wowed by his performance and voted him first-team all-conference honors. He had 261 carries for 1,348 yards and 22 touchdowns.
Well, everybody's going to be down on him a lot because of his Combine. Right. He's just not that. He's not that type of guy. We see guys like that every single year that just aren't test guys. And I think that's what Singletary is. Big concern that, 5'7", 203, right around there. He's got some short arms, doesn't have real big hands either. You talk about combining him with a guy like Tariq Cohen, they're what's Tariq's weight up to? Is he like 198, 200, right around there?
I think he's a little less than that. I thought he was like 191.
Soaking wet, maybe.
Yeah, okay. All right. So, but either way, you're talking about the Singletary's got a little bit. I think he, like I said, weighed in 203. I just like the kid. It's another thing. He's a guy that was focused on at Florida Atlantic, and he just went out there and continued to make plays. Stunk it up in the Combine. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I love the kid's feet, and it's just. He's another guy that I think you put on this team. I'm more bear focused when I'm looking at these guys to see how they're going to fit in with this roster. It's not I'm not looking at a guy like Saquon Barkley and saying, he's going to fit anywhere he goes. That's not who Devin Singletary is. I like his shiftiness, and you're talking about Danny. He's a guy that I think you give him that 3rd and 1 that we were talking about with Jordan Howard, even with his, lack of deep speed, he's a guy that can maintain his balance and take that ball where it needed to go. Is he the perfect prospect? No, not at all. Is he a guy that they're going to take at 87? Probably not. You can go, talk 4th. I don't know, Dan, you think there's a chance that he drops down to the 5th round? Yeah. It's close.
It's hard because, like you said, his feet are electric. His ability to jump cut, stop, start. When you watch his tape, he makes, I don't want to compare him to this player, but he makes Barry Sanders types cuts, where he can just stop on a dime, cut, make a guy look foolish, and juke in the open field.
The guy that I was going to bring up was Shady McCoy. He's not as explosive as Shady, but with his feet, you'll see him and you're like, oh, this is going nowhere, and then he's planning, and we see it with Tariq Cohen. He's going the wrong way. Oh, he was going the right way. That type of guy,
But Shane, excuse me for interrupting. That was the one thing that concerns me the most, because I think all three of us will agree that the one thing that frustrates us most about Tariq Cohen is that, come on, dude, turn it upfield.
Yes. I don't think Cohen has the instincts and the vision to be a true runner. I think he's just a great athlete and a guy who makes tremendous plays because of his athleticism. But I think in terms of being able to read blocking, to have a feel, an instinct of how to cut off of a block, I don't think Cohen has that. Now this kid does. This kid can read his blocks. He can make cuts off his blocking, and for a guy who's, like Shane mentioned, who's 5'7", 203 pounds. He will finish his runs, meaning he will lower his shoulder and he will take on defenders. So I don't know how that speaks in terms of longevity for his career if he does that in the NFL. But in terms of his college tape, he's a guy that really does, pack a wall up towards the end of his runs, compared to his size. The one thing that concerned me about his combine work, Shane, and I don't know if it's just like you said, he didn't test well, had a bad day, whatnot. That 4.66 40 was a little concerning because he doesn't look like he doesn't have home run speed, but he doesn't look like he's a 4.6 guy either. To me, it was more like a 4.57, something like that in that area. But his 7.32 3-cone time was more concerning because that really measures your lateral quickness, your lateral agility, and for him to measure that badly on that test was a little bit concerning. But a lot of times, what we see happen to these guys at the combine, they have so much pressure. They put so much pressure on them to run a good 40. Maybe he ran a bad 40, and then that kind of took everything else. Everything else kind of went downhill from there. He just had a bad day.
I agree, Danny. I was surprised about how, bad his combine was. But at the same time, you want to talk about you see a guy run a 40, and then you go back and you watch the tape, and you're like, Kevin White, classic example. Kevin White never, to me on tape, looked like a 4.35 guy. Ever. He didn't look like he was the 4.35 guy. So Devin Singletary, you're talking 7.32 in the 3-cone, he doesn't look like a 7.32 3-cone guy on tape.
With his feet. Not. Nope, I agree.
At all.
I agree.
So that's where, a lot of these fair weather fans go and you'll see a guy run a 4.32 and he's shooting up to the top of who they want to draft just because of that. That's where tape comes into play and why it's so important. He's not a 7.32 guy. Is he perfect? No, you talk about his size and his longevity. We don't need him to have, longevity over the long haul in his career. He's going to be part of a running back by committee. That in itself is going to help him out. He's not going to come in here and get 20 carries. That's not who he is. He's going to be, part of this conglomeration of, Nagy's going to. Taquan Mizell's getting a second down carry in a playoff game. You know what I mean? These guys are going to play. Devin Singletary, I think he's a guy that you have to like his entire package that he can bring to this team. None of these guys are perfect. If they were, if they had better numbers that matched their tape, then we're not going to be talking about them at 87 or in the 4th round or in the 5th round. It's just
exactly.
Yeah, there's no perfect guy out there. Greg Gabriel alluded to it. None of these guys are perfect. There's a lot of guys that are very good, and that's not a bad thing. this Madden nation that we're stuck in with a lot of people. They're looking at, speed and acceleration. There's so much more to it than that.
Right, and I think the key here is they want playmakers. They want guys they could and guys that are versatile playmakers, guys they could flank out, guys they could use in different formations in a variety of different ways on offense. The guys that can just surround Trubisky with playmakers. And I think Singletary is a guy that I think fits that bill. He's a guy who can make plays with his feet. Again, the test times, like we just discussed, are not what we expected. But if you go back to watch his tape, he's a guy that can make plays and a guy who's exciting when he has the ball in his hand. So if he drops down to the third, fourth, round range, I think that's lower than what many had expected him initially, going off his college tape.
I do think that there's a possibility that he could drop just simply because people are going to be scared by the combine. And, with a lot of these guys, it all depends on how the board breaks down, right? I mean, Devin Singletary, it could be a third-round draft pick because somebody loves him so much that they're going to choose him there. But also that team might bypass him because there's a greater need in another area, and so all of a sudden Singletary, who one team thought of as a third-round pick, is still available in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. And it's all about how the board breaks down.
Danny, if I were to put you on the clock right now with this, if I have a gun to my head, I think there's going to be more running backs available at 87 that we're surprised with than the other way around.
Yeah, and I think that's why you might not go running back 87, exactly. Right? Depends who's gonna drop down for you. Remember, this is a heavy defensive draft. You're gonna have a lot of guys going in the first couple rounds that are gonna be different, defensive players, linemen, edge players. You're gonna have some, have cornerbacks and safeties. It's a pretty deep. I don't want to say it's a great safety class, but it's a pretty good depth quality safety class, and I think a lot of those guys are gonna probably go in the second round as well because. Guys, this is a passing league. You got to have guys that can stop the pass. So I think edge rushers, defensive linemen, corners, and safeties. Those guys are gonna pretty much take up the majority of the first and second rounds. And you're gonna have guys that we thought possibly running backs that are gonna they should have gone in the second or high third round fall to the Bears at 87, where you might have 3 or 4 to pick from. And then that's where in Pace and Nagy I say, all right, do we take a different player that we didn't expect, or a different position group that we didn't expect to be available here, whether it's a tight end, whether it's an edge player, whether it's a corner or whatnot, or do we take that running back here? So I think that's why they feel confident in trading Jordan Howard, and they feel confident, although like you mentioned earlier, that they're going to fulfill that position or their need within this draft, whether it's in the 3rd or 4th round.
Not to go back to my guy Mattison again, but we're talking about Devin Singletary here. Mattison had more receptions in college than a guy like Devin Singletary did. And things like that you can't be undersold. Like I said, are they the same player? No, not at all. But they both have talents that this 2019 Chicago Bears team needs and covets at the running back position. Both of them do. And I totally agree with your sentiment there, Danny. I think a lot of fans are saying, oh, Howard's gone, 87, done deal. We're going running back. Honestly, I'll be surprised.
Darrell Henderson from Memphis, 5'8", 208 pounds, ran a 4.4940 at the Combine. He also had 22 bench presses. He was the Associated Press first-team All-American, finishing 2nd in the country with 1,909 rushing yards and 22 touchdowns. He also caught 19 passes for almost 300 yards. He is explosive.
You just said it. Explosiveness. He's making that house call, and he's going to turn around and run backwards from the 20 on in and flip all the Eagles players off on his way in. I look at his game and the way that he plays, he reminds me so much of, not obviously they're different positions, but he reminds me so much of Anthony Miller. And they're both from Memphis. You talk about that having that Memphis edge, or what, I forget exactly what Anthony Miller referred to it as back after he was drafted, but they play, to bring back Pernell McPhee. They got that dog in him. He's a guy that's got the explosiveness, and then he's going to tell you about it. And Chicago needs something like that. This guy's going to make plays for you in the passing game and in the running game. And Danny, if he's the one guy, to me, if he's there at 87 and they do decide to go running back, to me, that's the guy that you're describing exactly what Matt Nagy wants. He's the guy that you can give 5 carries. You may give this guy 5 carries in a game, and he's got 125 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he touched the ball 5 times.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying? If there's a perfect fit to what we, are talking about just in terms of explosiveness and big plays, this is that guy. You talk about pairing a guy like this with Tariq Cohen and, with the Bears wide receivers, and we talk about how big it is in the locker room. I think this is a guy that's going to come. The Memphis grind, I think, was the term I was looking for. He's going to be a guy that comes in with Anthony Miller. Anthony Miller's been through this, the season in Chicago. He's gonna be a guy that steps right into the locker room and is one of the guys immediately. They're gonna see this kid as soon as he gets on the field, Danny. And what did we hear about Tariq Cohen? Who is this kid? He's just out there at camp and he's making. This is where did this kid? He's so small, but he's making plays. He's dropping his head and spinning around guy and taking it to the house. I look at Henderson the same type of way. He's going to gain his respect on day one of camp because he's going to pop one off immediately, and then Kyle Long's going to be like, oh, okay, yep, now I know why Ryan Pace made this, got another pick for Jordan Howard and why they brought this kid in.
Yeah, and I think Anthony Miller, don't fool yourself. Anthony Miller is up there. He's in the ear of these guys saying, hey, you got to get this guy in here. Because like you said, this guy is what I envision that they are looking for. One of the backs they're looking at. We're talking about a kid who's got the vision, the ability to hit it and go. He's got that third, fourth gear where he can just, you put on his tape and you constantly see him running away from defenders.
Yeah.
One cut, plant, accelerate, he's through the line, and he's out into the second and third levels. With his ability, to be able to anticipate, he's got that running back instinct. He's got the ability to set up his blockers and cut off of a block. Something that we talked about earlier that I personally don't see Tariq Cohen having. This kid does have it. Mm-hmm. He can go ahead and set those blocks up, like I said, plant, accelerate through the hole, and cut. He sees the cutback, lanes developing. He feels them developing. So stuff like that. And again, just want to keep harping on this, that speed, the ability to create the 10, 15, 20, 30-yard runs, if not take it all the way to the house, is what Darrell Henderson will supply the Bears on offense. So I think if this kid is there at the third round pick, 87 overall, I think it's going to be a hard, they're going to take a hard look, and I think it'll be hard for them to pass him up.
Me too. Totally agree. And one thing that that'll get overlooked. We're talking about how they have to fit in. This kid's got very, very good hands, Danny. Mm-hmm. I think you would agree there, and that's Yep. You're talking about how he's going to fit in with this offense. It's not just the big explosive run play. It's everybody was talking in this free agency period about Le'Veon Bell. I look at a guy like Tevin Colvin who's got that explosiveness, but I've never been a fan of him at all because you're talking about instincts, and more importantly, you're talking about vision. Even back at Indiana when I was watching Tevin Coleman, it would drive me crazy. And this is what we've talked about with Tariq Cohen. Sometimes you're like, put your foot in the fucking ground and go. You got to see that. Tevin Coleman was the same type of day. I was so happy that Chicago wasn't sniffing around him. Henderson, I think his vision, like you talked about, Danny, and instincts, that stuff cannot be undersold. I mean, it's more important than being explosive and being a 4-4 guy. That stuff makes running back. Emmitt Smith, guys like that, they weren't the fastest guys, and that's where being a 4-4 guy is a little bit of a myth saying that that's going to just automatically make you a great running back. It's not. It's football smarts, vision, and instincts, especially at the running back position. And that's why you see why it's so important in a Matt Nagy offense. That's why you see, a guy like Kareem Hunt. He doesn't have all the explosive attributes you want, but he's got that vision. He's got those instincts, and that stuff matters.
The other thing this guy has is contact balance, meaning he doesn't go down on first contact. Tevin Coleman is a guy that, if you see how many times the turf monster, gets him, or a guy just swipes his feet and he goes down on contact. So, this guy can bounce off of defenders and then just, continue, I call him yards after contact, and continue picking up yak yards, after he's been hit initially. So the other thing about him is his ball security. This kid only has had 3 lost fumbles in his career. So that's another key thing, bringing him into an offense where you want him to not fumble the ball. And a lot of times with these rookies, they come in and a lot of times they have an issue with ball security. This kid will not have that problem. He's like I said, only had 3 fumbles in his entire career at Memphis.
You think about this depth chart. If you add a guy like Henderson at 87 with Mike Davis, Tariq Cohen, and Darrell Henderson, think about what is Matt Nagy? He wants versatility. Just think about those 3 guys right there. What did the Bears do when Jordan Howard was in the game last year? Everybody kind of knew what was going to happen. You have those 3 guys, have fun. What's going to happen? Don't know. You figure it out, defensive coordinator. Anything can happen. Is he going to be there at 87? I'm not sold that he is. These explosive guys, they go. People fall in love with that, and he might go a lot faster than we think. I mean, he might go 25 picks earlier than that. Who knows?
He averaged 8.9 yards per carry over his last 344 rushing attempts, and that's pretty spectacular. And some people say, well, he went up against some bad schemes and some talent that wasn't nearly NFL caliber. Well, who cares? The guy accomplished what he accomplished. That's saying something. Now, if you were to tell me he averaged 3.5 yards over his last 344 attempts, then we wouldn't be salivating at the thought of Darrell Henderson being a member of the Chicago Bears. Great pick. I love it. I hope he's there at 87. That'll be a great moment for Ryan Pace if he's deciding between Darrell Henderson and some other player. We probably would side with Mr. Henderson. Devine Ozigbo, 222 pounds, 5'11", out of Nebraska. He rushed for 1,082 yards, a 7 yards per carry average, 12 touchdowns. He also had career highs as a senior with 23 catches for 203 yards.
Classic one-year wonder guy, and it just shows you how much of a difference an effective coaching staff can make. Coach Frost got in there and really started to use this kid. He's got these big, you talk about Saquon Barkley. You know how it almost looked freaky, Danny, when you were watching Saquon Barkley play with his thighs and his calves, and you're like, man, that just looks so distorted. I see a lot of that in Ozigbo. I really do think it was Gabriel that talked about it too, that he really thinks that somebody is going to steal this kid. I mean, he's a guy he's got that speed where he can get to the corner, and he's not a small guy whatsoever. I'm just looking up his. I guess I should have had this ready. Shows you how prepared I am.
He's listed at 6 feet, 235 pounds.
Okay, wow. I didn't even know he was. I had him at 222, but he's a guy that Danny, like we were talking about with Henderson, and not to bring up that 3rd and 1 play again with Jordan Howard, but he's a guy that. He's going to run through that. He's not going to go down just by somebody tapping his foot. He's going to be a guy that's going to absorb contact and spin out of it and then make you a big play that way. And that's something else that can't be undersold, as you know as well as I do. Talking about Tevin Coleman, somebody, blows on that guy and he goes down. And sometimes there's not even contact. Ozigbo's not that guy. He's really, really good in the pass game. Another guy that I love his hands. This guy wasn't even invited to the combine. I don't know how they worked that. Danny, maybe you know. Is it more because he was just a 1-year standout?
Generally, the beginning of the year, they have the Bledsoe scouts, the NFS scouts, they call them, create this list of guys to watch throughout the year. And that's something that the scouts get, like the scouts now have next year's list already. And basically they work off of that. And my only thing is I can think of he wasn't on that list because, he until last year, he really didn't have that much of a big breakout season, until this past, his 2018 campaign. So that was my only reason why. But like you said, this is a guy I've been hearing about throughout this season. That guy I've been told, you got to watch this guy. You got to watch this guy. So I haven't watched him yet. He's on my next batch of running backs to watch, to break down. But just looking at some of his highlights and stuff like that, and like you said, he's a big guy. A guy defenders just bounce off of him. He's got the ability to finish his runs, lower his pad level and take on contact. So another guy who can run between the tackles, and he's got some of that shiftiness to be able to to break some runs here and there. So he's definitely a guy that I have earmarked to go ahead and break down in my next batch. And when I saw him on your list, I'm like, that's another guy that you're like the 8th guy just told me, check out this kid from Nebraska. So definitely looking forward to watching his tape.
And what is another thing that's overlooked when it comes to running backs? A lot of people are looking at their yardage stats, and they'll immediately go to their 40 time or their 3-cone. This is a kid that just didn't play in college at all. So you're talking about, one thing that happens at Alabama with, a guy like Trent Richardson, people fell in love with that 40 time, but he got the shit beat out of him at Alabama. You know what I mean? These guys got run right into the ground. Ozigbo, I'm looking at his 2015, he had 38 attempts. 2016, he had 97. Then he jumped up to 129 carries in 2017. And then even in 2018, 155 attempts. So this is a kid that really is, just getting started. I agree with Greg Gabriel. I think somebody's going to steal this kid. He's a guy like, he's never going to have those humongous, flashy, Shady McCoy, Darrell Henderson type plays, but he's going to be a guy that's going to give you consistency. Sometimes, Danny, a 15, 20, 25-yard run can be just as effective as taking 160 in for a touchdown. You pop a couple of those 25-yard runs in a game, defenses hate that. Then they got to stay back on the field after they tried to chase this guy down. Plus, he's got the size to punish you, like I said. And you kind of wonder why he wasn't used more. I guess it's just a coaching staff issue. You can look back to it with Mitch Trubisky at North Carolina. Kid was the number 2 pick in the draft and barely played for 3 years in college. Spot duty and stuff like that. It just goes to show you how even the college game and NFL too, a lot of it can be politics. You get the right coach in there, like we see with Matt Nagy, and he's going to use these guys. And he's a guy that I would absolutely love to add to this stable because he's a guy, too, with his size. You get a game in December when maybe Mitch is having an off day or he's battling through a sore shoulder. This guy has got that size where you can hand it off to him 20, 25 times if you need to, and he's going to give you plays in the passing game to boot.
I am looking at his stats here.
Against some of the better defenses, you said. Games.
Exactly. Against Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Iowa combined, he had 41 carries for 170 yards and 0 touchdowns. Now, that's not the end of the world. You got to look at the tape and find out what happened. Was he being used properly? Was the game out of reach right away, and so forth. So, Danny, I trust that when you look at the tape, you'll look at those games and right. Ascertain whether that was more on him or more on the situation of those particular games.
Right. Like for example, for Michigan, they lost 56-10, and he only had 6 carries. So It's like, how much can you do against that defense with only 6 carries? Against let's see who else he struggled against. It was Wisconsin. They were down. They lost 41-24, and you only have 5 carries. So some of these we got to, like I said, get the context of the game and see what was going on, why he didn't have a great game. But it is something that you look into. Definitely something that you break down and say, all right, put into context and kind of factor into your evaluation of the player. How did he do against teams who are known to having better defenses than others. But like against Northwestern, who albeit their defense isn't great, but they're also not the worst. He had 22 carries for 159 yards, 2 touchdowns. So he had a pretty good game there against them. So again, you just break down his tape. Take a look at the game. Take a look at the context of the game. What was going on in the game? Did he get injured? Was the game out of hand early on, where the play caller or the head coach went away from the running game and he wasn't given his opportunities? So it's more than just looking at the stats. It's actually breaking down the film.
Yeah, and when you're going into Nebraska, there's not a lot of offensive talent there in terms of the playmakers, Danny. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where they're going to go in there and stack the box, like you said. That kind of plays into why maybe he got 5 carries, why he got 6 carries. And let's be honest, Nebraska, when you talk about Nebraska 10, 15 years ago, they were Alabama. They could out-talent people. Can they do that now? Yeah, against some of the smaller schools, absolutely. But when you have a Michigan, they can't do that to Michigan. They can't do that to Ohio State. They're coming in there and they're going to say, all right, we're going to stop Ozigbo. And who's the blanking on the kid? He's in the draft this year.
Stanley Morgan.
Yes,
Jr.
Morgan. Yes. Who else is there other than that? It's this is where you can drop in the cricket from my house from last summer, Aldo. It's pretty barren in Nebraska, but Danny put it perfectly. It's all about context. It's not just going in and saying, oh, look, he didn't have very many yards against Michigan and Ohio State. Well, there's reasons. There's reasons for that, obviously.
Well, yeah, and as I'm looking at the stats here, so this is why the stats almost always lie, right? Numbers almost always lie. All right, let's study this real quickly, because it's the NFL.com scouting report on Ozigbo that points out that his stats weren't good against those 4 Big Ten powerhouse defenses. Well, the first game was definitely not good stat-wise, only 5 yards on 6 carries. But the second game against Wisconsin, he averaged 5.8 yards. Yes, he only got 29 yards, but he was given 5 carries, but that's for an average of 5.8 yards. Then you get back to the last 2 games of the season, Michigan State. Or excuse me, let's go Ohio State, because they mentioned Ohio State. He had 20 carries in that game for 86 yards for a 4.3 average and a touchdown. He also caught a pass for 13 yards. And then against Iowa, 10 carries, 50 yards. By my math, that's 5 yards per carry, 3 catches for 19 yards. So that stat there by NFL.com, a bit misleading, no doubt about it. And we trust that Danny will take a really good look at the tape and let us know on next week's show. Guys, time for final thoughts. You go ahead and share whatever you want, whether it's about our interview with Greg, whether it's about the running back situation with the Chicago Bears, or you got a good stock tip for me. Meeting with my financial analyst later this week. Whatever you like.
I thought you were talking about... I thought you were meant to draft stock tip, not actual stock tip.
I'll take that, too. I'll take whatever advice you offer. Danny, let me begin with you, and then we'll end with Shayne.
Yeah, again, just to kind of wrap up what Greg had said and what Shayne and I were talking about right now is the running back position. I think everyone now is a little worried and wringing their hands over the trade of Jordan Howard. And, guys, we knew this was going to happen. I think, pretty much the writing was on the wall. Some might be surprised by the compensation. Some might be surprised by the timing of it. But it's just, like I said, something that they want to move on, give him probably give an opportunity to, know where he's going to be playing next year. And now the Bears are just going to move on. And I feel like they have identified a target or 2 in the draft, obviously. And I think they feel comfortable, whether that's in the 3rd round or 4th round. We don't know. We'll see. But there are a lot of quality backs. We just discussed 4 or 5 here tonight, but there are a lot of more quality backs that are going to be drafted. Some might not even be drafted at all. Every year we have running backs come in, make the league, make rosters as undrafted free agents, and lo and behold, did we have one last year in Baltimore? Gus Edwards, I think he was an undrafted free agent out of Rutgers, and look, he was playing critical, snaps for them for down the stretch there.
The kid for the Broncos, yeah.
And that's a perfect segue, because the guy I'm studying right now is this kid from Oklahoma State, Justice Hill, and I see a lot of Philip Lindsay in him. He's not a big guy. He's about 5'10", 198 pounds. He's got a skinny frame, but he's got that ability to jump in and out of holes. He's got the vision, and he's got that 4.4 speed that we've been talking about, the speed to be able to pull away from defenders. So, but he's got that thin frame. So he's not going to be a guy who's going to be running, 3rd and 1 and getting those short yardage, runs for you. But he's a guy that can come in. He's a good pass catcher. He's a willing blocker and pass protection. So, just an example of you can find talent at the running back position, throughout this draft, and sometimes even after the draft. So, that's why I did not want the Bears to go out and pony up money for a guy like Le'Veon Bell or a guy like, Ingram from the Saints. Go find a guy. They found Mike Davis, a guy who can come in and be a serviceable starter for them until their draft pick develops and he's ready to take over the full-time position. So let's not worry about the running back position just yet. Again, they are in the process. Shane put it, bluntly earlier. They're in the process of collecting talent and putting it around Trubisky. And the more versatile players you have, whether it's as pass catchers, speed guys, putting them around in this offense with a play caller like Matt Nagy is going to make this offense more dangerous and more explosive. So I'm very confident that the Bears will get a very good running back in this draft.
Yeah, Shane, before you offer your final thoughts, I'd like to just touch on what Danny just said. I'm not one of these guys that, is going to hashtag in Pace We Trust, because I don't have blind loyalty to anybody in sports. You got to continually prove to me that you are getting the job done. And I'm going to excuse bad picks. No general manager has ever hit 100% on their picks. That's never going to happen. But I will say this. Ryan Pace knows what he's doing. He's got a plan. When he traded Jordan Howard, it was because he's got a plan. He just didn't do it willy-nilly. He's looked at this draft and identified a bunch of running backs he thinks that can help with the assistance of Matt Nagy. There's not a lot of blue chippers in this draft for running backs, but there are a lot of running backs, in my opinion, who can be very productive if they, as I said earlier in the show, are paired up with the coach, scheme, teammates who can help that guy succeed. And I think there's a lot of players out there in this draft that can help. And I agree with Danny that there are a number of names. I've been putting together a little list of guys who are probably not going to be drafted. And we're going to ask a couple of these guys to come on our show. We've already got a commitment from one. Probably not going to be drafted, but the type of guy that we will see if they make it to the Bears, if they're assigned by the Bears, we will see them in Bourbon, and we'll be going, whoa, this guy looks awesome. So exciting times ahead. Shane, your final thought, please.
Well, I'm going to hashtag that shit, Faith and Pace. Executive of the year. You got your coach of the year.
There you go.
And has he been perfect? No. But I think he's been a guy, and you look at his pattern, I think he's learned on the job. He's learned from his mistakes. And how can we really – going to go back to free agency. Free agency is a minefield at best. And you know what? You guys love Tariq Cohen? He was a 4th rounder. You know what I mean? Where did we get Jordan Howard? Oh, no, he's gone. Got him in the 5th round. Who drafted those guys? Ryan Pace did. You get another offensive guy in here that knows exactly what he wants in Matt Nagy. He's going to tell Ryan Pace that. Listen, you got to have faith that he's not going anywhere. He's going to be the guy that's here for the foreseeable future. And that's a good thing. And I'm going to just go off about what you said and Danny said. and keeping things in context, and that's what's most important. We see the PFF stuff. Lauren Cox had a PFF George on talking about why the Raiders won the Khalil Mack trade. You know, it's all about analytics, and it's, you know, he said, you know, if you can draft two above average coverage corners, then that's obviously a win for Oakland right there over Khalil Mack. Well, no, it's not. You have to have context. Mm-hmm. Why are they good in coverage? Is it because of the pass rush in front of them? And then he said, well, it's because of money. You're not. Well, guess what? Bears paid financially through the nose for Khalil Mack. He's also generating them a shitload of money. Mm-hmm. You know, so everything is in context, and it's why did Ozigbo struggle against top tier teams? Well, Aldo just showed you. Danny just showed you. Keep things in context. Don't focus on 40 time. Don't focus on just the 3-cone. It's part of the process. Yes, you have to go back and watch and know your surroundings. Know that Boise State isn't a factory for, you know, they're not like Alabama that can next man up as a 5-star recruit, like Ohio State, like Michigan. Keep things in context, especially this time of year in the draft. These guys aren't Saquon Barkley. Doesn't matter. You know what? The Super Bowl winning teams aren't being led there by running backs. It's not. It's not these guys that are, you know, running you all the way to the Super Bowl. That's not what this is about. What is it? It's a passing league. You got to have a guy that, yes, can get you the tough yards, but you got to have a guy that can catch the ball and make his way that way. So just keep things in context. Don't get caught up into just speed, just explosion. It's, you know, could we have won a Super Bowl with Jordan Howard? Absolutely. Is he an explosive guy? Not really. He's good enough. And sometimes good enough can get you a trophy. And that's really my lasting thought there.
It's a great one. We are very fortunate here at Bears Bar Room to have Danny Shimon and Shayne Marsaw looking at tape and giving us their reports on players that we think that the Chicago Bears might be interested in. It makes for a great talk. It makes for a great listen. I have listened to every single word of you guys, and I learned a lot today. I'm also really, really, really excited about upcoming shows. We've got great guests planned. We've got great football talk. We talked about this being a 10-part series, the Draft on Tap series being 10 parts. It looks like it's going to be a little bit more, as this show that we're recording on Saturday morning with Greg Gabriel kind of popped up on our lap, and we decided to add that to the 10. So it looks like it's going to be 11. It could be a dozen. Who knows? It could be more. It could be a baker's dozen. Whatever it is, we hope that you are enjoying it, and let your friends know, friends who love football casually, because I think, you know, we offer the casual fan enough substance here to keep them interested, but also the diehard guy that's looking at tape as well. And we welcome all your comments. Shayne, let people know on Twitter where they can contact you.
I am at Wasram, WASRAM. That's just my last name spelled backwards because I'm pretty nifty like that. You know how it goes. So yeah, at Wasram. Follow me. You'll see some humor, some mostly Chicago Bears football talk, and we have a little bit of fun along the way. So we keep it light.
Danny, share your Twitter handle and tell us why you chose number 56 at the end of your Twitter handle.
I'm at DShimon56. That's DSHIMON 56. And 56 has been my number when I played football, and I played some softball. And it was I'm a diehard White Sox fan, and my favorite player on the White Sox is Mark Bearlissimo. So his number was 56. So that's why I kept that number. And plus, it looks cool. Well
done. And also, Danny, tell people you're always taking requests for doing quick scouting reports on certain players. Tell people about that.
Yep, I've been getting them in by the dozen here. I got another batch to go for this weekend. Just any player that you want, a quick scouting report on positives, negatives, what I like, what I don't like. I'll put some film out there for you. As long as I can get my hands on that film, I will go ahead and give you a brief scouting report on the player and how I think, he fits not only on the Bears, but if your team is, if your team is not the Chicago Bears, if it's wherever, the Eagles or whatnot, just let me know, and I can go ahead and break that down for you as well. So just hit me up at @dshimon56 with the player you want. As long as I get tape on him, I'll give you a scouting report.
Excellent. All right, and let me tell you folks that you can follow Greg Gabriel on Twitter. He's at GREG
underscore.
No, it's just straight at GREGGABE. Greg Gabe. So follow our man Greg Gabriel on Twitter. He is, of course, the writer over at ProFootballWeekly.com, and you can hear his voice on 670 The Score. I also want to issue a thanks to the production team responsible for this show. That is Bearlissimo, Joe Mandel, Bobby Bombs, and Ryan Badgley. You guys are great. That's it, guys. Remember, if you drink, please do not drive, and always bear down!
Bear down.
Postscript, make sure you tune in to the Mike North Advantage Sunday mornings live at 8 a.m. on our Mixlr channel, or the podcast is available a little bit afterwards. And on Monday night, Mike always brings a special guest to the Advantage, and you can listen to that 7 p.m. live or the podcast version later that night. Goodbye, everybody.